Hey guys, I'm Herb.
Yeah, I'm Luke.
Luke's designer. I'm producer on Worlds Adrift, and we wanted to have a stream for you guys to kind of discuss some of the important stuff that has been happening in the game,
Yeah,
and of course in the community that everybody's been talking about, and that we're also, think are really important issues. I think the gist of it is the game is in a state where there's a lot of player versus player issues to be solved, a lot of questions, a lot of future design decisions and mechanics to come into the game, and we wanted to talk to you guys about. And Hiki looks a bit different. Sorry, I
you
forgot
should
to mention.
clarify that. Yeah.
And Hiki is stuck on a train, I think in Leicester somewhere.
Yeah.
Leicester for us Americans, and
So we've had to bring Herb in.
so, yeah, I'm
Emergency
substituting.
replacement.
Yeah. So yeah, we want to talk about the PvP really, because you guys have a lot of questions, and I think one of the things that one of the sort of criticisms lately is that we haven't really taken a really hard stance, a very clear stance on how PvP plays into this game and how we see the role of PvP going forward. And yeah, I can understand that, right? I think we've talked about it in lots of different ways, and maybe we should be a little bit clearer that for us, Worlds Adrift is this free-form sandbox game.
Yeah.
It's always been that way, right? Physics is a really important part of it, and PvP is an integral part of that. There's really no way that we can extricate PvP from the game, nor do we want to. So I don't know whether we want to phrase that as Worlds Adrift is a PvP game or it's a game with PvP.
Yeah, well, there's always going to be both elements. Like, everything I'm designing at the moment is always a mix. It's just what demands are coming, what the main grievances are with the player base and things like that. So, it's that's it going forward. It's going to be a game of two halves. Like it's going to be PvP as well as PvE, and we're not going to separate the two.
Yeah, I think the original idea, which is the vision that the whole team's been working towards, is that the game, we're not a big AAA studio, right? We can't make an MMO that just has treadmills of content and will always, like that's the main release cycle of the game. It's more and more content, and within a few days of releasing it, the best players have already beaten it or consumed all the content, and they're just waiting for the next update, right? So we can't be that. So we're making a game that's really about what players do with each other, right?
Yeah, putting that content that the players can basically control or influence.
And that's why we always talk about, like, we want players to create their own stories, to tell their own stories, have their own adventures. We're just releasing the tools into the world, into the game world. And, when we have added a new tool, like, later on maybe there might be a thing that's not like the glider, but some other gear that'll give you a movement boost, right? Maybe a double jump or something like that. We want that to really ripple through all the gameplay in the game and change how people interact with each other, how, I don't know, politics works with different player communities. And that's the kind of gameplay we want, this kind of content we want.
Yeah.
So PvP is a really, really important part of that.
But, well, I was going to say, that said, obviously right now, we know we're not there, right? We are closed beta. We've got a lot of features missing. We're focusing on things like stability, and then going forward, getting all those main pain points and grievances out of the way, and that comes from PvP, right? That is definitely the biggest point of contention with the players.
So yeah,
we're going to be discussing like what not only our stance on all of that, but what kind of plans we have going forward, and how that's going to influence you guys, and obviously get some feedback on it.
Yeah, so we have a list of questions here that people have sent in ahead of time. So I do want to mention before we get right into it that so there's all this PvP stuff that people like, or not even necessarily PvP, but playing with other players. Cooperation is one of the pillars of the game internally, right? We talk about how we want people in a crew to like create stories with each other, decide on adventures and all this stuff, and the PvE content, the kind of that kind of gameplay enriches the PvP, right? Enriches the player to the cooperation aspect. So if we add a new mechanic where, for example, in caves there are, like, for example, in the island creator, right? We've released an update a few weeks ago, I think, with where you can place sort of dangerous elements on your islands. So you can place these spikes, these turrets, right? These ancient sort of Saborian turrets that come up when you get close. So we implement that in the game, and that kind of all of a sudden feeds into the player cooperation and antagonism, right? If you now leave your ship somewhere and you go into explore the dungeon with these turrets, how does that impact your crew dynamic? Or when you come across other players maybe in the same dungeon, now it's like maybe we cooperate and then we split the loot, or there's all this kind of stuff that we want to create this texture in the game, and that wouldn't be possible without the PvP, right? So
yeah.
Let's get into the questions. Let's see. I don't know if there's some immediate questions here. If not, we'll get into the ones that have been sent in by email. So, engine overheat. More information. It's not really a question, but
well, I guess there's stuff about that. Well, I mean, engine overheat kind of plays into more of the what the current meta is. I don't know if that's worth kind of going over, I suppose, because I mean,
yeah, let's do that first. Maybe let's talk about like the sort of the big ticket things that people have complaints about, right? So for one, I think so. The biggest thing on our list, on our board, is the client freeze. It's been an issue for months now, and we've improved on it little by little. And I think as we've worked on it, we've realized that it's not really just one issue.
Yeah. It's
a bunch of things all wrapped together, and it looks similar. And so we've like untangled it and fixed more and more of it.
So that's an ongoing thing, and it is our top priority right now, because it influences everything else. Like, no matter the frustrations you have in PvP, they're exacerbated by the fact that in the middle of it all, you'll get like a 10-second kind of freeze. Then you're like, oh, I'm probably gonna be dead when this is all done and sorted. But as I say, with the new technology and us working through it all, it's just like unraveling all this stuff that you're like, oh, okay, and then you fix this, you fix that. But all it does is make small improvements, but we're getting kind of closer. It's all starting to kind of make sense a bit more now.
Yeah, so that's the client freeze is definitely something we want to release. We want to fix in the next few releases, right? We want to make sure that this is something we continue to work towards, and we're confident that quite soon we'll be able to, put this one to bed. Let's see what else. Let's talk about the swivel gun and kind of defender's advantage.
Yeah, so there's a little bit I see in the chat and the questions we've had, which is that a level of safety, I guess, for players. One of which is going to be the new swivel gun, which is coming along pretty well. It's almost there.
In an internal build.
Yeah. So we'll be getting, like, as a studio, we'll be getting our hands on it soon. And then it's a case of getting the balancing in, and then sort of getting it into a patch. But mechanically, it's pretty much done.
For those of you who don't know, the swivel gun is sort of a new kind of cannon. It's a smaller anti-personnel cannon that can go around, all 360 degrees, and it's meant to. It's obviously anti-personnel, so it does a lot of damage to players. It's kind of a shotgun blast, right? Like a deck-mounted shotgun, and it's meant to discourage boarding, or to provide a bigger defender's advantage for players in that boarding scenario, compared to, like, it's not really an offensive weapon because you can't really do much damage to the to other ships or anything with it. Oh, is my mic not on? It's turned off.
Oh, so you've been talking through my microphone.
I guess I've been talking through your mic. I hope everybody's heard most of what because I think I've.
Hopefully
everybody's heard
you've
me.
been hearing Herb okay. So yeah, the swivel gun is going to be a big, wide area shotgun blast. Anyone boarding the ship has to be quite, more careful getting on board your ship. The other thing as well is you'll actually be able to start placing these things on the ground. So if you wanted to kind of secure an area, you could put swivel guns down, or ship cannons even, on the ground itself. And so anyone trying to approach your ship can be taken out that way. But then on top of that, the shipyard dome will actually begin to act like a shield. So any projectiles or bullets coming from the outside or out of it as well will get blocked by it. So that means that, when you're building your ship, you can't just get bombarded from the sky. So it's that extra layer of defense there.
That, like, kind of early game thing where you're trying to just build your first ship or make some repairs and move on to another island. We want to protect that a little bit. We want to make it so that it's not so you're not so indefensive or easy to jump on, right, in that situation.
Because we are aware, you know, there is that element of some high-end guy comes in, they're decked out with cannons on this little ship, and they just help, like, you know, rain fire down on you. So that'll be prevented. Another thing is bringing in the overheat and the heat mechanics into the game. They're not there massively right now. The cannons have their overheat, but what it doesn't do is affect items around it. So a big part of making it so you get these PvP ships that are super lightweight, super packed together, and are just made for like zipping around and destroying the hell out of things. Yeah,
so like this question is, current ship-to-ship combat between prepared groups is dominated by a number of cannons and the number of people the sides have to man said cannons. In a post from quite a while ago, Boss member mentioned that wiring was a planned addition that would help one player to take on groups of players with skillful play. Is wiring still planned, and could we expect wiring anytime soon? And part of that is the wiring, sure, but it's also just the meta ship, right?
Yeah. You know, people right now have their like internal engines, and they create these little impenetrable boxes, and that kind of and it lends itself to these low, like speedy little death ships. But with the plan to overheat and engine overheat is your engines, if they're packed tight together, they're going to heat each other up, and you're not going to be able to burn your throttle for too long because they're going to overheat and they're going to stop working. On top of that, their heat will dissipate into the cannons as well. So packing everything in real close together, you're going to have a few shots of your cannons, that's going to overheat your engines, your cannons are going to overheat each other, so you're going to have to start thinking about spacing and distances between your parts so you're not constantly overheating them. Another side on that as well is right now the cannon splash damage doesn't knock you back from cannons, so you have these people who have their helm right next to a big row of cannons. All that's going to take in the future is one well-aimed cannon shot to kind of blast in that area, and everyone is going to get knocked down and knocked away from their positions. So that's all these things to kind of...
Because right now small ships are a little bit overpowered, right? There's not enough of a mechanic to ask you to spread things out a little bit more. And we wanted to introduce something, to like make it so that one, you want more space, you want a bigger ship, because a bigger ship is heavier and there's already natural downsides to this, right? So this will kind of even that out a little bit. So, and because smaller ships right now, because they're so much lighter, they can zip around, and so they're automatically faster.
Yeah, and it's a big part of getting it balanced right, because as a solo player, we're never going to be able to get a solo player to be able to reliably take on a crew, right? Because to give one player that much power, there's no real way we can restrict that power from a group of 5 people, and then you just have an escalating arms race. And I think it's that understanding that, and it's not there right now, is that a solo player has to build like light and fast, right? Your only option is to burn it away from there. Now at the moment, that's not quite there. Like, you know, you can have quite a lot of cannons and on a tiny ship, and you can be faster than, say, someone who thinks they built a fast ship, but these guys have, you know, they're decked out to the nines with guns and stuff. So we need to do some balancing on like cannon weights and stuff, just so if you want to go in as a battleship, you have to kind of take a hit on your speed. And that means that someone who is opted for less cannons, maybe even just a swivel gun to defend on this little ship, and that thing's going to be, just get out of fights a lot faster.
Yeah, the other thing that is kind of a higher level design goal that I think I've mentioned in maybe some of the like a forum post or something, is we're playing with this idea, because right now most of the time if you're in a losing fight, you're at the mercy of the attackers, right? They will, they can take your stuff, they can destroy your ship, they can send you to the abyss, etc. We wanted to shift it a little bit more towards, I'm losing this fight, but I can still run, right? There's kind of like a soft loss state where you can lose a fight, but you can still run, and that way, PvP fights aren't so all or nothing. And so, like, if you're winning a fight, you can either board them or take some of their stuff or ransom them for some materials, but maybe they can get away. Or if you're really winning, then maybe you can like take them over completely, right? And that kind of ties into a little bit of sort of a longer term goal that we have, which is what we want the PvP system to look like in a sort of group setting, right? In an alliance way, between groups of players, organizations, in a social structure.
Yeah. So, so I guess from a priority in development, it's get that stability there, start addressing all those PvP grievances, and then alongside that, get a loop and a reason for PvP, make it a little bit more meaningful, alongside all the social kind of structures that people expect in MMOs. So we'll be bringing in alliances, and then you'll notice we've still got all the plans for the PvE stuff. That's all coming into the Island Creator at the moment, with more stuff launching very soon there. So that, as I said, that's still all ongoing.
Yeah, we want alliances to be really important, right? We want that social, player-driven social sort of structure to be a part of the game. I want to take some questions because I think people are asking. So, Phoenix asked, "Will we ever get massive battleship turrets?" So
that's quite far on, but
yeah, it's a little further away. But we have talked internally about a capital class version of cannons and engines.
Yeah. Maybe even core as well.
Maybe even core, or maybe all kinds of stuff where we do want to have man, that would be awesome to have I know Luke has this idea of an Atlas cannon that just you can't aim, it just shoots straight. It's like a death ray.
Mount it onto your ship, and wherever your ship is pointing, it's just gonna send out this thing that just consumes large amounts of Atlas to mess stuff up.
James asks, James says Zewix asks, ask them about the planned max size for ships.
Yeah, but it kind of ties into what we just said. We do want capital class ships, but that's
it's a little ways away.
Yeah, because we still have a fair amount of work on getting that ship technology to the point where we could have vast sizes.
Yeah, I mean, so right now there's sort of two aspects to this. One is the technical side, right? We do want to optimize these ships. We've set the current max size where it is because that's kind of where the tech allows us to get to, right? Like if you have a fleet of a bunch of ships, we can't have them be huge right now because we haven't optimized it to that extent. And the second thing is we're the ship shaping mechanic right now in the game, where you go to your shipyard and you pull out the vertices and such. That's still very, very prototypey. We just never put any more work into it after we released it, and we really want to revisit that, make that nice, so you can actually see where a deck is going to be, and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And just there's a few features and part of the ship creation that isn't there right now. Stuff like being able to turn off symmetry and kind of extending out the sides and things like that. There's a few things that we've got feedback from the players, but right now, the editor is rough. So the first priority for that anyway will be just making that a little bit more clear, knowing when there's going to be a deck or not, getting a general idea of the resource cost, as you're editing it, and making more clear so it's not just a wash of circles and squares. It'll be a little bit more dynamic and intuitive. And then later we'll have the actual more shipbuilding features.
Yeah. Chance asks, will there be a classification between large and small ships? Small fighters wouldn't be able to have cannons on them. There's absolutely no point in building any ship but a box ship at the moment. That's the most frustrating for me. I understand. That's literally what what the mechanic for heat and overheat we just talked about is designed to do, right? It's designed to create an incentive for spacing things out, or a disincentive to stacking things, right? Most games, AoE damage is this mechanic, right? So cannons do AoE damage, but we also wanted to have overheat sort of force you to space things out and to require you to have a larger ship to do certain things. We don't want to do really, really arbitrary, hard sort of rules, like you can't put this cannon on this ship, because we want it to be a little bit more freeform, right? Players figure out sort of clever tricks and ways of doing things, and we want to preserve that aspect of the game. Let's see, what else? Game optimization during PvP, it'll freeze for 30 seconds and kill all of us on the ship. Yeah, right now that is the top
I mean,
priority.
that's, I know Lorien was asking, all about the ideas and stuff, but actually getting them in, and it's simply a case of, the priority right now is on the freezes and stuff. And these are all but we're also still making the plans and how players are playing the game now. And I think we're almost like we're getting to a stage now where we can really start, heading up. We had to do a few like engine upgrades and stuff, so we're getting towards the end of that now, and we can actually start getting more resources onto actual features and updates like that.
I think so. For the next few updates, it's still going to be very much sort of stabilization, like Luke said, and covering these design holes and these grievances, right? Let's see what else. The reviver, right? Sort of PvP, reviver charge system. That's something that I think you made a blog post about this, right? Or was it the forum post? I don't remember. Basically, the concept that if you die further away from your reviver.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, another, obviously a big part and a big concern is griefing and the not risking your own ship. So if you haven't read planned update stuff, the way that the personal revivers are going to change slightly. So they will have almost like a resource attached to them, like a charge, let's say. And the further away you are from your personal revive when you die, the more this charge gets depleted. If you run out of charge, then every time you revive after that point, it actually sends like a dangerous pulse through your ship and starts to damage everything. So you're incentivized to not die too far away from your ship.
Too many times.
Otherwise, you actually risk losing your ship, and that charge is replenished if you dock your ship. So the plan is there that as a defender, you'll barely take a hit at all, and so what you have then...
You probably wouldn't, right? There's going to be like
exactly.
Zone,
probably have like an exclusion zone or something like that.
Yeah.
But the plan is that as an attacker, like as a defender, you know that if you just kill the attackers enough, they're eventually going to have to stop. Like they can't just keep throwing themselves at you, and that's a kind of like a big part of what we want to address, because sometimes you get some guy come out of nowhere, maybe he's glided from miles away and he's just started attacking you, and that's fine, he can still do that because I imagine people will, but just knowing as a defender that hey, if I just kill this guy a few times, he has to stop.
I mean, the real problem with this is that right now, like one issue with griefing, well, one of the core issues with griefing is that you're not, the attacker or the person doing the griefing isn't really putting at risk anything, right? Or not nearly enough compared to the defender. And so when you have this sort of imbalance of who's putting up their valuables or their ship or something, then there's an incentive to keep trying, keep doing this like really annoying thing. Even if you lose, you get killed multiple times. Right now in the game, we know that's an issue. But so if you're attacking further away from your ship and you're on somebody else's ship, they have all that to lose, right? If they kill you, then your ship is still okay. So we've designed out this mechanic so that you're putting something else at risk too. You have this, your reviver charge that that you only have a certain amount of before you have to dock your ship and recharge it. And so that, this isn't in the game yet, but this is something that we're thinking about for one of the next updates. Yeah. I think there is one. Yeah, James asks from Phoenix, do you foresee PvP eventually being balanced enough not to have players be able to chew through internal walls with non-ship weaponry?
I guess that means...
Like with the...
Because I noticed that the salvage tool's coming up a bit with the fact that it can be used on like ship parts and stuff. And I mean, that's always the intention, to have some baseline item that can be used in that way. Right now, there's a slight imbalance because you can swing at full speed while using it. It can be interrupted, and if the person takes damage. And there's two things that make that difficult at the moment. Is one, when they're swinging around wildly, just aiming at your engines, there's nothing you can really do. You have to have a good aim, right? And two, if they're like on your ship blasting it, and you don't have a gun or ammo, you have to craft it, you're literally just staring at them being like, can you stop? Wait, let me craft some bullets, So, and that'll be a thing until we get melee in, really. So we want to address that anyway with it's always the plan to have like a quick hit. You might not have a melee weapon attack equipped, right? But you could still just have like a little punch that will like damage someone and like, knock them back a little bit. And so you'll probably see that come in a lot earlier than a full melee system. It will just be the simple hit. So if someone gets in close, or you run out of ammo, pistol ammo, you can go up and just slap them. In case they are still trying to salvage or whatever, and that's going to constantly interrupt them. So right now, it's like they just keep trying to salvage, and eventually maybe you run out of bullets, or they'll be swinging around. So one, they'll slow down if they're holding their salvage tool, which makes them a lot easier target if they're dangling. And two, if they're just on the deck of your ship and there's like a couple of you can just run up and punch everyone, and they're not going to be able to stop you from interrupting their salvaging.
Yeah. Let's see. I genuinely love to see cameras and pictures and frames. Yeah, we had that in earlier. Did we ever? I think we took it out before the very first alpha.
Yeah, no, I don't think any players ever got hold of it.
Because basically with this system, we really have to figure out the back end, right? Like, how do we store all your images, and so the data storage stuff is something that needs to be figured out before we can implement the system fully. So, but we love it. Obviously, one day we'll get it back in. So we'll be able to put picture frames back on, and then you'll take your screenshots, your selfies, and put it in the picture frame, and then you'll be able to find other people's picture frames.
But then, I guess moving on, I suppose another part of maybe if you're into PvP. Now we know obviously everyone wants PvE and all that, but at the moment we're just addressing the kind of the PvP aspects of it. And at the moment you kind of just fly around maybe a high-end area, and you're looking, and hopefully someone wants to fight, and it creates that idea of
it's just like ne'er-do-wells,
people,
right?
People who probably don't want to fight. They don't get a choice, because the PvP is like, well, I want to get in a fight, so they're going to pick anyone. So part of the longer term loop is kind of territory control throughout the world, which will be sort of tied in with your alliance, and we're not completely we don't have the concrete, we have a rough a design of it, but we need to work through it to make sure there's no weird edge cases.
So take all of this with a grain of salt.
Yeah. But it will be the case of taking over islands to eventually control a territory that you'll then own as an alliance. And the plan for that is that it will focus to PvP. If you want to fight, you'll probably go to one of these border territories and maybe try and expand your own territory, or take on, try and take over someone else's. And because it will be specific objects and parts within an area, you won't kind of be just flying around trying to kill people. You'll actually have to kind of...
Yeah, it'll centralize some of the combat, and it'll provide a purpose for it right now. Right now, it is, like Luke said, it's a little bit like, all right, we've done most of the content, most of the PvE content for the game, and there's no kind of structure for the PvP, so I'm just going to go around and kill everything I see. Even if they're just newbies, right?
Whereas we want PvP is when we add in all of the alliance communications and have an alliance in there, we want people to start banding together and go, hey, you know what? We can now more freely communicate with each other, which is a big part of that. So it means that the PvPers should try and start to come together maybe and go, hey, let's control this area of the world, and the others will do the same. And so then if they want a big fight, they know as players, well, let's fly into their territory and try and take it over, because they know they're going to meet a fight. And so that means that as more of a PvE player, you can kind of skirt around those hot zones and they won't be more let's take you out, because they don't want to potentially endanger them for the main fight of defending their territory. And as PvEers as well, we're going to kind of tie in a more of a get in kind of a trading system essentially. So the initial kind of loop that we have is PvEs can kind of be useful to the PvPers in trade and be like, hey, we'll fund your war efforts while we go happy and explore and stuff. That's kind of how we envision the
sort of the player population interacting with each other.
The exact end game as it is, while we have those bigger features coming in, like the sky wells and the island dungeons and stuff. So this isn't our end game goal This is just how we see it, like, you know.
Yeah, we want to preserve this kind of, you know, this is a way for us to have the player versus player and player with player cooperative gameplay. And on top of that, or maybe below that, however you see it, is the, you know, sort of the PvP gameplay that fuels it. And we can release new content.
Into that.
Into
like,
that sort of ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
I saw a question earlier that, any plans to implement, from, where'd it go? Just from Walt, any plans to implant some sort of very long cooldown warp for your entire ship so you can meet up with friends easier?
Yeah, I mean, so maybe not for your entire ship, but that kind of ties in with the second thing we're focusing on, which is more convenience and playability. So we've got multiple character slots on the way, so you can have like another character that might, you know, that you might be doing other things with. Like
a solo character that you only play with.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean we obviously want the main character to not have those options. So we had another blog post about the crew reviver, which means if your crew all go offline, you have the ability to switch between a crew reviver and a personal reviver. So you can kind of have like a secondary ship on the side that maybe you just run by yourself. So if your crew offline, you can go like, oh, that's fine. Like, I don't have to stop playing and risk our main ship. I can go off and play on the little solo ship and go on my own adventure by myself. And maybe that's a trade ship, maybe that's a little small fighter ship. You know, we kind of want that openness to have that play style. And also the crew beacon will get some changes, so it's easier to meet up if you'll die and get split up.
But it's also a little bit less exploitable in other ways.
Yeah, moving a few exploits there. And then just, you know, the Alliance radio, we're going to fix up the crew chat because it's really unwieldy right now, and you have to type /crew every time, which is awful. But, you know, we want to kind of have more of those staples, like being able to kind of share link items in chat, as well as just have it more intuitive to chat to each other.
I mean, a little bit, you know, how traditional MMOs have been doing it for years, right? We want to have that. There's another question from Kitco, who's called himself Kitmate. So on the Island Creator, the damage system is different and more harsh. Is this going in the main game? And if so, is it going to be tweaked?
I was tweaking that today even. So it's been made less harsh. But also, it's going to take some getting used to, because I think at the moment, players can fall from any distance. And that, you know, that does tie into PvP when someone jumps off a ship and they just free fall onto yours. They don't take any damage, and they just start to, like, you know, attack you while their ship is, you know 100 meters in the air. And so now with the new system we're doing on the Island Creator, because it gets the player updates earlier than the main game, is that will kill you. So the full damage, actually, you can't circumvent full damage now. And it will take some getting used to, because I think players are so used to not really taking damage from
they're
falling.
Used to the exploits. The exploits become part of the game.
Exactly, yeah. So everyone's like, it's no full damage. It's like Overwatch, right? You never die if you jump off a mountain. But that'll change, and so it'll get some getting used to. But that's the plan going forward, is, you know, just to fix up some of that stuff.
Oh, you can only pin one. Sorry, I just unpinned something else. I wanted to answer this one from Vadim. Wait, what just happened? Somebody unpinned it again. Why the salvage tool can damage the ship which player does not own? This is unbalanced mechanic. Attacker invests nothing in dealing damage to the ship, and on the other hand, the defender has to invest his bullets and atlas shards to get rid of the attacker. This is unfair. So we agree with the principle, right? Like, we talked about it a little bit earlier. The attackers need to risk something. They have to invest in attacking. Otherwise, that is basically the definition of griefing, right? The specific avenue that you're talking about, which is the salvage tool, we don't think that that's the problem, right? We don't think that's the place to make to implement the nerf, because right now the salvage tool does 10% damage to something that on a ship that you don't own, which is, and we can tweak that. We can tweak it down to 5% or something. We need to have a way for you to be able to, we don't want to have invulnerable stuff in the world, right?
Yeah, we still want shipboarding to play a part. We like the idea that from a distance, you kind of, you pepper the ship, you get some vital parts, you soften them up, and then at the right point you make that decision of now do we board it? And when you board it, then you can go in with your salvager and say take out a key part when it's been softened up. The main imbalance right now is that it's the little as a defender, it can be, you know, quite hard to hit someone who's like swinging around. Yeah, you can Atlas Pulse, but we know we have some issues with that we need to address, like being able to really connect. So
it's more about giving the defender tools and a stronger
but we wouldn't
advantage.
Want it, but I don't think we'd ever get to the point where we're like, there's no reason to board. Like shipboarding is, and using your grappling hook is an awesome part of the dynamic PvP experience for us.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when do you board, how they're going to board, like, and you playing, and obviously with the swivel gun comes along, suddenly that attacker then has to think about it. But also, you know, if their ship is quite far away and they've grappled onto yours, them dying at that distance from their ship is actually going to be something they have to consider and they risk. You know, at the point at which, say, you know, he's boarded a couple of times, but he's been killed. He's out of charge. He can no longer board now.
Why am I the griefer in this scenario?
You're not a griefer. You're a boarder.
Okay,
I'm piloting the ship.
Oh,
you're
right.
boarding.
Okay.
But he's been killed a couple of times. He's not very good. He can't aim properly. And from this point on, he literally can't board anymore, because if he does board, he might risk it, but if he does, he's going to risk damaging our whole
my
ship.
ship will start taking damage. Right?
Yeah. And so then as an attacker, you have to be there, like, you have to weigh up that rather than just throw yourself at it, because it doesn't matter. Yeah, so that's our intentions in that regard.
Yeah. So the pin question was just a thought: is it hard to make a PvP and PvE server? So we've covered this before, and so there's two sides to why we can't really extricate PvP from this game. One is that, you know, the design of the game kind of depends on this player interaction, and the second part is it would be a monumental task to try to figure out, not just tech-wise but design-wise, how to pull PvP, how to like stop PvP from happening. Because we can turn off pistol damage and stuff like this, right, or cannon damage on players, but there's physics in the game. There's all kinds of ways to like indirectly PvP, right? Indirectly do stuff that negatively affects another player, or to grief them, right? In lots of games where there's no direct PvP, there's always ways to like mess with somebody. And so that's a never-ending fight. That's a rabbit hole that we don't really want to start going down. You know, what if you roll an engine onto a player? What if you like somebody's built a shipyard? You just surround it with their shipyard. If, like, for example, we've seen a suggestion where you're not allowed to enter somebody else's shipyard bubble, right? It was like, okay, so you're building a ship, then I'll just spawn a bunch of shipyards around you and then trap you. And there's all these kinds of things we'll spend years trying to address. And if you think about exploits, this is going to be, you know, the mother lode of all exploit sources. So that's kind of, and you know, other games don't have such a strong problem with this, maybe because they don't have physics. There's a lot more arbitrary rules, which is fine for other games, or they're session based.
Or even the things you create aren't physical based, right? Like they're kind of isolated. We can add like ships and stuff, but someone could just ram your ship into the floor, and their ship weighs twice as much as your little dinghy, so you're just pinned to the floor,
and you can't kill them.
You can't kill them. You can't get their ship off because your ship just isn't strong enough. Then we're like, oh, how do we balance that? How do we? Yeah. Then it's like, oh, we'll remove collisions on ships, but then it's, you know, as said, you're just chasing, you know,
an impossible goal. Really.
Yeah.
So you know, unfortunately, that's not a possibility. So I know this question gets asked a lot.
But that doesn't mean that it's like it's always going to be, oh, I start the game and I'm going to get completely pounded. We are looking at ways to discourage that and add some sort of, like, you know, security to that kind of side of things. We just haven't got anything pinned down yet, but we're aware that it's a problem, and we don't want it to. We're not just going, that's PvP though. Like it's definitely, we still want that element of danger as you travel the skies, and engage. But we want to encourage more of that. You know.
Yeah, like we want to get players kind of a normal starting experience with the game, and kind of not in the first 5 minutes getting clubbed, right, by a high-level PvPer coming in. But yeah, it's kind of a balance. It's kind of a balance between how do we restrict some of the mechanics or whatever without restricting the free-form nature of the game, right? And so this is going to be an ongoing process, and you know, we really rely on you guys, our beta testers, and most of you were alpha testers before as well, or many of you were alpha testers as well. to kind of give us feedback and tell us what's wrong. And you know, we watch high level experienced player PvP streams all the time and see what do they do, what are the tactics, right?
Yeah.
And this is like how we talking about the box ship meta and all this kind of thing.
Yeah,
right?
Vexus design, isn't it?
Yeah. You know, our goal is at the very least someday soon the Lexington will be a viable PvP ship.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Again.
Yeah, those kind of amazing designs we saw back in the alpha, but we understand how those things work. But yeah, I mean, it's the, as I said, like, you know, talking about like randomly getting attacked and stuff. The ideal scenario is if you don't want to fight, you can run. And
yeah,
and
that has to
like,
be
and
a
it has to
viable
be
tactic.
a viable
Yeah.
option, you know.
Yeah.
You just hit that burn and you go, you know. And we will have some of the stats that aren't in the game yet, like the engine overheat. That'll make its way in. So if you kind of focus on like being able to have your engine run at high speed for longer than this guy who's like decked out with a load of cannons and stuff, he's just not going to be able to keep up with you. And that's a key thing we need to make sure is there. So if you design your ship to be a little zippy thing that can just get away at a moment's notice, then that's a perfectly viable ship, really.
So there's a question from Drake. Let me pin it so it doesn't keep moving. When is the wipe for the US East server? I think it'd be good to wipe it to get rid of all the duped ships and cloud chaser engines that create lag to make it a more level playing field for players who just started, who are going against pirates who have played since the legacy engines existed. So the pirates can easily outrun them, and it's a bit unfair. It would also reduce lag with no legacy engines. Yeah,
I mean, so the wipe is just a case of making sure we've got everything covered, because we don't want to wipe it all and then a brand new like dupe bug or exploit comes up and it kind of, you know, does throw everything out of whack again.
Yeah, I know. So we posted a question on the forums, like how often do you think we should wipe, or how often would you be okay with the closed beta world wiped? And most people were like, yeah, let's do it. Like, do it as often as you want to. So that's good, but we still don't want to do it like every 2 weeks, right? That still feels too frequent for us. So so we're waiting. So the next wipe is gonna be, it's kind of gonna be a big one, because we're gonna wipe the worlds and we're gonna create a sort of a new world layout. It'll have, so for those of you obviously who've been playing since the beginning of closed beta, this has been the same world since the beginning of closed beta, right? Yeah. We haven't, any of the islands submitted, you know, after about May or so, haven't gotten into the game. So this will be a chance for like a lot of new islands, like the procedural grass that we've had in the island creator for months now. No islands in the game have it, I don't think. So that stuff will come in. It'll be a lot of new islands. It'll, you know, and a bunch of other new changes to the game when that sort of update comes. So that's exciting. Yeah, brand new world, so the Cardinals Guild can get ready to start mapping again. That's true. Okay, questions from Discord. Z-Weeks. Question, smoke from cannons is already that beautiful volumetric fog in game. Surely that could be applied to cannons too. Not really, actually. Technically, it's they had to be done differently for technical art reasons. So we can't really easily make it so that the smoke from your engines or cannons or whatever just seamlessly blend and become a cloud that everybody sees. The clouds are already quite a convoluted system. We had to develop quite a lot of new technology for it. So yeah, I mean the particle effects from the cannons and the engines we're working on right now. We're kind of doing a big pass on all the VFX. Yeah. There's you'll start seeing in the next kind of content update a lot more visual effect polish and just nicer looking. Yeah, it's gonna be pretty nice. Yes. Yeah. Because we got we did a VFX blog. Jason did a blog post a few weeks ago. So all of his work is going to come into that same world wipe patch, I believe. So that'll be exciting. And then from Boon Lover, I'd like to know if we will ever get rams on the front of the ship and we'll ever get flamethrower turrets. Okay. So. I mean, rams, technically there's kind of like, if you've got the Founders Pack, you have the eagle sort of figurehead, and that in theory could be a ram. So one thing that we haven't mentioned now that, and I don't want to get you guys too excited about this, I don't know exactly when this will come in, is kind of a comprehensive damage system rework, right? So right now everything kind of has a very sort of uniform way of doing damage, but we want to make it so that, for example, if you collide metal with wood, maybe the wood takes more damage than the metal, right? And so this is the beginnings of having like a ramming device, a ramming ship part in front, or perhaps having like the equivalent of rubber tires or barrels or something on the side of the ship that are more bumpers, right? So you can run into them and they don't take much damage. But if you shoot them, excuse me, if you shoot them with a pistol or something like that, they take a bunch of damage, right? So kind of different damage types, sort of, and different different materials affect that. Again, I don't know. I don't want to say that this is coming super soon, but this is kind of our vision for what will come in a little bit, right? In some months' time. And in terms of flamethrower turrets, that's, I don't know, we haven't really thought about that except...
yeah, I mean, technically the new damage system allows for like heat damage, so it could easily be a thing that we decide to go with, but there's a whole different, everyone then, when you can set things on fire, everyone wants to set everything on fire.
Yeah, it's a big mechanic change.
And
so
it has a lot of, it's kind of like when people ask for water and stuff, it's not as simple as going, yeah, there's water. Because suddenly it's, what happens if a tree falls in the water, what happens if a player does, or a bit of metal does, and it's like, it just snowballs and you're like, oh, okay, that's a lot of stuff that you have to suddenly consider and build new stuff for. So we have to be kind of careful with that stuff.
So look at this question. This is literally coming from the opposite side, from Sky Matson Antone. Will there be a way to effectively salvage parts from an opponent's ships in real time? So that's like coming from the opposite sides. He wants to be able to like do a bunch of damage to an opponent's ship really quickly. Probably not in the short term. Maybe long term we'll have some kind of way. Like, we want to make sure that the defensive measures are there earlier than... oh, is your mic okay?
It went off, which is really weird.
Yeah, why do they do that?
Are they like on a timer?
Luke's mic just went off, by the way, so he's fixing that. We want to make sure that defensive options are there before we introduce like a new way of attacking, right? Like in line with our philosophy that defense should be easier and
yeah, I can't imagine that we'd ever go down the route of
jump on somebody's ship.
Yeah, because I know, because you get a lot of it where you're thinking, oh, if I was dangerous as a defender, the attackers would be scared to engage with me, but the flip side of that is if you give the defender that much power, the attackers have the same power, but there's 5 of them, so that's why stuff like the swivel gun and like the Atlas Pulse, they're directly advantageous to the defender, and they don't add like a vast amount of unbalanced power to a number of attackers. So that's a kind of careful kind of tightrope we have to walk, And yeah, I mean, I just saw the suggestion that air mines. Never really thought about that,
I think we thought about air lights more than air mines.
Yeah, but it's quite interesting, if we do push as a solo player, if you want to run.
Oh yeah, that's a cool. I literally never thought about that.
I don't know why, but if you could drop mines behind you, the people chasing you have to suddenly.
Yeah, they have to travel a longer distance.
Yeah, they have to.
That's interesting. I like that. Thank you, Martin Meissner.
Yeah, we're gonna. That's quite interesting.
We'll just take that idea. Thank you very much.
Well, we've thought about it. We've had this idea all along.
Yeah. And so there was a question that's scrolling down. I want to get to it quickly before it goes. Furian115 on Discord. With the engine overheat, it sounds like sand walls will become much more difficult when flying full speed, no? And if so, how about an instrument to help monitor the overheat? Oh, it's almost like he's read our design doc.
Yeah, so the plan was always that the Badlands and the sandstorms were going to rise in temperature. And so being in those regions of the world, basically you need to kind of specialize your ship a little bit. One, so you can kind of prepare it and you can be just actually better off. Like if you're like deciding you're going to be, and this kind of ties in with how we're going to rework some of the resources and to promote kind of trade between things. There'll be unique things to find and that other players need from the desert, for example. And so you might, be building a ship that's specialised in travelling around the desert. And so anyone who does try to sort of jump you and attack you, you could be like, yeah, well, I've got high overheat, so I'm just going to burn and get away from you. And anyone who tries to chase you is going to splutter out.
I mean, that's kind of ties into another thing we've been talking about, which is the procedural, and it's not really PvP related specifically, but it's about sort of RNG in the game in general and sort of the stats on engines and cannons and this kind of stuff, right? So because overheat's not actually implemented in the game for engines rather, and cannon ammo capacity is not implemented either, there's some dead stats, like literally dead, right? Which obviously is not ideal, and we want to rectify that soon. But also just RNG in general. We've talked about, like, obviously at some point, it didn't matter the rarity of the schematic, they all had all the stats had the same base value, potential base value, right? And then we introduced like sort of a minimum budget for every stat, depending on the rarity of the schematic. So an exotic schematic, you know, the minimum is, I don't know, is like 21 or something like that for any of the stats. So that's kind of our, you know, we're still playing with that value, right? When we do the wipe, I think we might change it. And so that was one way that we wanted to kind of soften the blow of RNG. But the more important thing is about Atlas Core upgrades.
Yeah, so we'll be moving at least the initial Atlas Core upgrades onto a cumulative knowledge tree. So you don't have to spend knowledge, but when you reach particular knowledge milestones, you'll actually just unlock that ship core upgrade. So to lose like this horrendous kind of RNG thing that people are getting frustrated with, that'll also extend over into getting cannons and spending knowledge on like a new engine and getting it as it's like useless because it's got bad stats or even dead stats. When the dead stats are all gone, that'd be better, but also you'll be able to salvage those schematics and gain what we're calling ciphers, which you can slot into any of your learned schematics and gain like a stats boost from that particular stat. So that means there's a lot more tweaking and customization you can do on your learned schematics. You're not, whatever you loot, you're not just stuck with that. You can be like, oh, okay, I can do this, I can tweak this, and I can get it to like my play style, you know. And so that would hopefully alleviate a lot of the frustration and RNG and being like, oh, that one's useless, this one's useless. Like every schematic you get can be broken down and used on like ones that you do already have.
Vadim also asks, since we have better defenses now, including Atlas Pulse, swivel guns, and other stuff, can we have the old good glider back? The current glider is not fun at all.
Yeah, no, so we've got some changes there. The glider will be more fun to use, but you won't be able to use it for extended periods of time. That's the current plan.
Basically, we want, you know, we tried nerfing the glider to prevent some of these exploits where you just basically like park your ship up really high and just glide down to every island. But there's no, like, it's just impossible to nerf it to the point.
The world is so large that there'll never be, unless we just have you just fall out of the sky with it, it can't be that. So we're going to have to, and we also want to prevent this idea that, you know, we've seen players who are playing it and they would just fly and then just glide island, kill themselves, back to their ship, glide to the next one, kill them, and it wasn't the like loop that we kind of wanted, and that's also a reason why the personal reviver will have those charges. So we kind of encourage players to actually fly to an island and not just sort of glide to it. But yeah, so basically your glider will, you know, basically break or close up if you use it for too long. But the flip side of that, will be a lot more agile and fun to
it'll be better. It'll be better for like, I don't know, some number of seconds, 10, 15 seconds. It'll be like the old glider, but then you just won't be able to use it after that, right? You'll have to like wait until it sort of cools down. Yeah, let's see.
I saw Lexi earlier saying about like, will the swivel gun be good against mantas? I know it's a PvE question, but yes, it will shred up mantas.
Some mantas, maybe not all of them. People are memeing about Tier 0, the ground, Tier 8, cave zone. Let's see. Not PvP related, but are there plans for ship-to-ship docking?
I mean, obviously we talk about these things, probably reasonably far down the line though.
Yeah, it's not so much a plan as an idea at this point.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I think it's probably the best way of putting it. From Christian, will smaller, faster ships always be better, or will big ships eventually become viable? So yeah, I think we covered it a little bit earlier.
Right? So obviously a bigger ship is able to have more stuff on it. We're also, another potential like kind of PvP balance thing we're thinking is the cannons actually have a kickback. So if you're flying in like super light ship and you fire your cannon, it's actually gonna sort of knock you off course a little bit. So it means like a big heavy ship is able to really have those, you know, kind of flurry of cannon shots because it's not gonna send it sort of barreling over. So yeah, little things like that, like playing into the physics and tying that all in, is the plan. So if you get those guys going around the little box things, as soon as they fire hail of bullets at you. They're just gonna like kind of, you know, send their ship keeling over.
Yeah. From Raji Tal, will there ever be any way to recognize hostile players from a distance? As it is, by the time you find out, it's almost always far too late to avoid a fight with them, especially if you have a speedy non-combat ship. So I think somebody else asked a similar question about, I don't know if this is exactly asking about like the render, basically the technical render distance of ships, right? Which is maybe like 250 or so meters right now. And that is a technical limit that we're working to sort of resolve by, you know, sort of working to upgrade the engine, right? The spatial OS engine. It's probably a little bit away, but in terms of like recognizing players from afar, we like the idea that you see a player and you don't necessarily see their name until they're a little bit closer and you mouse over them, right? That distance is not set in stone. We can play with it. I don't know, maybe if you guys would open up a thread on the forums, kind of get some feedback on, or sort of gather some feedback on whether people think that's a good distance currently or whether it's too close or too far. That'd be really valuable to us. From Lorianne, what about the animals in the game and the PvP elements? How do they get changed with that? So I think there was also an earlier question about if there will ever be sort of automated defensive things like creatures or something in the world. And so we have thought about it. Again, it's more in the ideas phase than in the plan phase. But we want to somehow incorporate like other non-player entities as sort of like helpers in the PvP, the griefing situation. Yeah.
So the creatures we've seen, we have got to make some changes there with them, just like by necessity. So, but on top of that, we're planning a lot more broader kind of just simple like little creatures and things and birds and all that. So we want to sort of bulk up their playability a little bit and flesh that out. And then, you know, we want them to still play a part in PvP. You know, like. No, we like it when mantas get involved in a PvP fight, for good or for worse. It's an interesting dynamic, and we want to expand more on those things. So they'll always be there to play a part, but we're going to expand kind of where they show up and how they interact with you to make it even more interesting and kind of push those stories.
It also is like, it kind of feels like a nice story, a kind of a nice situation where, because you're in the Badlands and the Badlands mantas are insane, and there's no fuel there, you've got sails on your ship, right? This is like kind of how you travel in the Badlands, for example. And that did it turn off again?
I think it's off, yeah.
Is mine on? Okay, mine is still on. But like if somebody's attacking you in the Badlands, all of a sudden you're like, oh crap, we need to like turn on the engines, we need to run, and that all of a sudden draws the mantas, and it's just like this chaotic situation.
Done.
Is it out of battery or something? Okay. So yeah, so that's something we do like. We do like the fact that like in this chaotic situation, the creatures get involved in the.
I just talk in your microphone. Hello, guys. Right. Yeah, it's fine.
Stop. Vince is laughing. Okay. From Rick, will we ever get spy glasses or binoculars?
Yeah, hopefully. We had the camera in early alphas and stuff, or not player alphas. But they did actually have a.
We're just gonna pass it back and forth.
Yeah, sure.
It's very romantic.
I like it. And they did have a zoom functionality, and I'd love to bring that back. But also, like, you know, when we start getting alliances in the game, you'll start getting your alliance emblems, and that ties into the territory control as well. You'll see who owns an area, and the fact that you could zoom in with your spyglass, and then maybe their flag or their sail has, you know, a friendly alliance on there, you can suddenly be like, oh, cool, it's them, you know, and that kind of can ease those tensions a bit. And we can even, you know, start reintroduce the flares and have like, just give a load of colours of flares and then let the players decide on what those colours mean. So like a white flare is like, I'm friendly. A black flare is like, I'm going to come kill you all, you know, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. All right. So the stream is going to be ending quite soon. So we'll take like 2 more questions. One more question. Intern Vince is is controlling us. All right. As ships are more or less our homes, any plan to make them more homey, like kitchens to craft food, labs to craft drugs / boosts, or maybe even a bed to heal faster. Yes, basically.
Yes, those are like directly from our design documents, so I don't know who you are.
Wait, what is his name? Walt. Okay, Walt. Yeah, I mean, so there's a concept of like furniture and things like this that don't work exactly like ship parts.
Yeah, like they have a little bit more freedom to be moved around on the fly. Just so like while you're flying between things, we'll have
Just maybe push some furniture around.
Yeah. So because we want to have more stuff to do when you're flying. So the Alliance radio will be there, so you can sit down on a chair and like boot up your little radio and just chat to Alliance mates while you're flying. Also, you can just rearrange things. Maybe
have we talked about the Alliance radio publicly, like in a
blog post? I don't think so.
All right, so alliances, the way you
never mind.
The way you'll be chatting with people in your alliance is you'll craft a radio.
Yeah.
You know, when you're away from the radio, when you're like on an island or whatever, you won't have access to alliance chat. It won't be like MMOs
it's not
where
a global thing.
Yeah, it's not like a global, like we still like the feeling that in Worlds Adrift you're exploring, you're out alone. Sometimes you're just isolated, right? That feeling of being cut off a little bit. Yeah. But when you're on your ship, when you're using your radio, then you have like the chat channel.
Kind of like it feels like your ship is this more of a home and this area of like socializing and stuff. And so yeah, you're getting that furniture in there, building it all up. But then we understand that when a ship is lost, you're like, oh damn it, I spent all that time meticulously placing everything and making my ship really nice, and now it's all gone. I can't be bothered anymore. So that's when we have the blueprint system, which will basically, once you've got it all laid out and it's all perfect, you can essentially just save that layout. And so if your ship is lost, you're able to like boot it up at a shipyard, and you can see where you place everything. And so you have
you still have to craft everything.
You still have to craft it all, but you'll be able to simply like snap places back to where they were. And so you can kind of, you know, if you've got a really nice design and layout, you can just it remembers it, and you can quickly get it all kind of over time, get it all back into place again.
This is more in the ideas phase than the planned phase, but just so you guys know that we know
like this is obviously this was a PvP champ, but someone asked about making the ships more homely, and that's where we want to go with that. But that's further off than some of the other things we've been talking about today.
Cool. Okay, so as our mics are slowly dying and time's up, and Vince is rushing us, we will have to say goodbye. And until next time, we will try to do streams upcoming in next week or future weeks. We do want to like engage with the community a little bit more directly, like we used to do back in the alphas and stuff. So yeah, keep a lookout.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.